Yen, hello. Welcome to the show.
Hey Jamie, glad to be here. I've been a big fan of the podcast, so I'm really glad to finally be on the show.
Hello, everyone. We've got a very exciting announcement to make, which is that this is the first of many Powered by Volta Take Charge episodes. Yen and I explain more in this podcast about what that actually means. But first of all, can you believe it's been 5 years since the establishment of the Volta Foundation? And there's no one better to talk us through that journey than the founder himself, Yen Ye. We talk through the highlights, the challenges, the lessons learned, and what the future has in store for the foundation. We hope you enjoy talking about a lot of exciting things today. First of all, though, it's your soon to be 5th anniversary. It's been 5 years since the Volta Foundation was founded and the first battery brunch, of course. So when establishing, what were your expectations? Did you expect to be where you are today?
Yeah, Jamie, thank you for the kind note about our anniversary. And 5 years really flew by, I feel like. Maybe I'll start from here and then we'll jump back to the beginning. So today, the Volta Foundation is one of the largest trade and professional associations in the battery industry. And we're relatively new as a trade association. We're only 5 years old, as you mentioned. And the way that we started was quite unique as well. So I think in 2019, our community started as a group of battery professionals networking, essentially in the San Francisco Bay Area. So our very first event that we created was an event called the Battery Brunch. Many people who have been in the battery industry for a couple of years might be familiar with that. The reason that it has a funny name is because it literally started out as a weekend brunch networking event that Linda and I organize in the Bay Area once a month. I believe the very first battery brunch we organized had about 5 or 6 people in attendance, and it started growing right away. And in a couple of months in 2019, one of the biggest problems that Linda and I had was every month finding a space large enough to accommodate a couple dozen battery professionals to have brunch. So that was our humble beginnings. We started out as a community building initiative, and one thing led to another. And now we are this kind of trade association that's doing the work that we're doing now.
It's been great to see the growth over the years, and we'll get into kind of what has made it successful and how many communities try to do the same thing, and it's hard to get off the ground. So yeah, pleasure to have you on to kind of talk about all these things today. Just before we do, and we get onto the Volta journey, I wanted to announce a new partnership between us, a new exciting partnership between the Volta Foundation and the Take Charge podcast or Take Charge community. So for all of our listeners and viewers, this is the first of many episodes which will be a Powered by Volta episode. So that basically means that all Take Charge episodes with Volta member companies will be powered by Volta. So that's going to be amazing to amplify stories and of many of the thought leaders across the battery space. So we've been in talks about this kind of partnership for a while. So Yen, thanks for kind of making that happen. We're excited to get this going.
Yeah, really excited for the opportunity to really democratize access to some of the leading thought leaders in the space. So really glad of the work that you're doing here.
Well, this is all about you today, Yen. So let's get back onto you and let's rewind 5 or 6 years. So how did you establish the foundation, and talk us through the why as well?
Yeah, so I would say there's a couple of things that has kind of come together in a confluence to lead to the creation of the Volta Foundation. Maybe I'll start with my personal journey. So my career in battery started in the early 2010s when I was going to school at MIT studying material science. So even then, I was doing research in the battery space. I was thought of myself as an electrochemist, and since then, I've gotten jobs on battery teams at places like Apple and other places in the Bay Area. We're just kind of hands-on working, making batteries day to day, and working with teams that are making batteries. So I think along the way, me and my friends have had some time to think about what is the trajectory of our industry. And it's really interesting the moment in history that we are today. The battery industry, looking backwards, say 10 or 20 years ago, used to be a bit of a niche industry, essentially a supplier of components to, say, consumer electronics. But looking forward, the battery industry is going to become a major part of the global economy, so more in the shape of, say, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and so on. So as the industry navigates through this transformation from a smaller industry to a major part of the global economy, different parts of the ecosystem needs to grow with it as well. And so one of the parts will be, for example, the nonprofit infrastructure that exists to support the growth of these industries. So when you look at other industries, you see, say, SAE for automotives or IEEE for electronics. I think at the time, looking back in 2019, the battery industry didn't quite have an organization that was able to fulfill those critical functions that are important for the growth of the industry. So we started the Volta Foundation to fill this gap in performing functions that are typically fulfilled by nonprofits. And so the characteristics are usually things that don't make a lot of money, don't make you famous, but are important for the health of the ecosystem. So things like community building, we talked about Battery Brunch, but also things like workforce development, leadership development, advocacy, both on the cultural side as well as the policy side, this kind of dissemination of information, democratizing of knowledge and expertise. So these are just some of the examples of the things that we focus on, that we want to fill, to fulfill.
I asked the question at the start of the record today. Rolling back 5 years, did you expect to be where you are today? If you were to kind of visualize the future, is that yes or no? And kind of back then, what did you see for the Volta Foundation 5 years ahead?
That's a really good question. I think, like most endeavors, it's hard to see 5 years into the future. So I think if it's a time machine, we go back to 2019. I think I would be very encouraged if I was to tell myself at the time that 5 years from now, this weekend networking activity would lead to eventually, say, 300 of the leading thought leaders coming to speak, and more than 30,000 people RSVP to the event. I think that would be quite a statement to think about in 2019. But I think along the way, everything made sense. One of the reasons I think we're able to grow so quickly is because there is a need in the ecosystem for this kind of service that we're doing today. Yeah,
nothing runs smoothly, of course, and 5 years is not very long, but also it's long enough to experience some ups and downs. What have been your personal highlights over the past 5 years?
Oh my goodness. There's so many things. I think this is one of the most fulfilling jobs that I've had. A couple of highlights. I think that the first thing that I can think of is just the extraordinary people that I've been able to work with as a result of working on the Volta Foundation. One unique thing about being a nonprofit is that a lot of our work is done by volunteer staff. So today we have 4 full-time staff and then about 50 volunteer staff that organize about 15 major programs that we host. And of this group of roughly 50 people, I'd say these are some of the most talented, passionate, ambitious people there are in the battery industry. And so I feel kind of day to day, it's really a joy to be working with a team here. So I think that's one of the things that that I like the most, and also somewhat unexpected. I think along the lines of people, there are also, of course, the individuals from the companies that we're working with today. There's more than 160 member companies that are supporting us today, and each of these companies have obviously people around those that we interface with and work with, and that's been truly a joy to watch the growth of the industry together in the last 5 years, and have this shared sense of mission to say, how is it that we can come together and find ways to collaborate and coordinate to help everybody grow. So that's also a joy, just kind of being in a place where we can be a kind of a strong supportive role for the industry.
Just to credit you on some of those highlights, we've obviously been working with you for a while now, and you seem to have created a very inclusive culture. Everyone is very friendly, very forthcoming with their support, whether that be the kind of full-time staff or volunteers and even member companies. There just seems to be a vibe of people wanting to help each other and ultimately advance what we're all doing, and to trying to get to that end goal of electrifying the future. So that's been amazing to see and amazing to experience. It's refreshing having come from different industries and since moving into batteries. So that was, I wanted to credit you on that. On the flip side, what have been the biggest lessons that you've learned, the biggest challenges that you've come across, and the lessons that you've learned that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. I love to kind of riff on what you said just now about the people in the battery industry. One thing I love about the battery industry is that the people who choose to join the industry tends to lean more idealistic. And so it's just really wonderful that people are here, of course, to make a living, make a difference, but also there's a sense of this shared mission that if we are able to make better batteries, that it will be somehow a positive thing for our civilization and for our planet. So I like that already the people that are in the industry have this good vibe about them. But also, the battery industry is in this inflection point where it's growing quickly, right? Every year, I think, depending on who you ask, somewhere between 25 to 50% growth. So what that means is that every year, and we see this at our events, a lot of the people are new, and that gives us an extraordinary opportunity to really create a culture and establish a more inclusive environment where people are not operating in silos, and there's more of an awareness that in order for us all to succeed, that there needs to be more of an interdisciplinary, inclusive approach to the way that we interact and the way that we work together. So I'm glad that you noticed that. One thing I forgot to mention, I'm really proud about the Volta Foundation, is that everything we do is open access. So every year we host more than 50 events. We have lots and lots of publications, both weekly, monthly, and so on, annual. And everything we do is open access. And so I think that's one of the ways that hopefully we're contributing to the culture of being inclusive and not being so silo as the battery industry. It actually historically started out as a specialty chemicals offshoot. And so I think these tends to be more secretive and more has a different vibe than what the industry is today. So sorry to go on a tangent, but I think it's really important to point out that there's a role for us all to play, certainly with your podcast as well, to help establish this culture of collaboration in the industry.
No, it's a good point. And yeah, not to kind of skirt over the subject, I love the idea of a shared mission. We're all on the same journey, and that shared mission, and then ultimately people support each other. As you say, people need to make a living, but everybody is also in this industry to make a difference. So, I think we're definitely seeing that in the community, which is great. Back to my original question: what have been the hard times over the past 5 years, and yeah, what have you learned along the way?
Oh, that's a great question. And apologies, I went on a tangent before.
No, it's all good.
I think there's an overall theme to the challenges that I've encountered at Volta Foundation, and this sense of a mismatch between our organization's capabilities as well as the industry's capabilities and the scope of the problem that we're trying to solve. In Volta Foundation, we have this mantra, we say speed and scale. Even today, when we're thinking about the battery industry, we kind of feel like because there are tens of billions of dollars in investment, it's kind of a sizable industry. But when you look at the adoption curve, we are still, in most places, only single-digit percentage of the passenger car penetration. Right? Maybe that'll change. Maybe we'll break 10% this year. But really, we're just in the beginning stages of tremendous growth. And with that, I think the challenges that we face comes with just not being in the right scale to fix the problems that we want to fix as a nonprofits. So what are the problems? Things like workforce development. We need to train 1 million people to be ready to work in the battery industry. Well, today we have 4 full-time staff, right? That's kind of a miss. Obviously, we're not the only people that's going to be doing it. But this sense that we really need to develop quickly and with a sense of urgency and kind of having that culture permeate through the organization and permeate through our ecosystem. I think it tends to be the root of the problem that I encounter day to day. Yeah, this kind of desire to really make a difference and what we're able to do with our resources that we have today.
Has your mission changed or evolved over the years? Kind of based on your momentum, have you changed the scope or even made it more ambitious?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jamie. So our mission is quite simple. Since the very beginning, we are here to support the growth of the battery industry. Since we were founded 5 years ago, we have a little bit more clarity about what it is, the specific functions that we want to fulfill. So there's 4 main pillars. The first one is bridging silos. When we're thinking about silos in the battery industry, obviously we think about folks in industry, but also folks in academia, in policy making, and in finance. So one of the kind of the pillars that we're working on is bridging silos. And the second is developing leaders. So this is both developing the talent that's already in the battery industry, giving people opportunities to learn and to grow and to develop their own reputation and get ready to become leaders in the future. But as well as thinking about people who are not already in the battery industry. So people, for example, with transferable skills in other industries that are interested in joining us, students in school that are maybe deciding on career paths. So the second pillar is developing future leaders. There's, as you know, there is a big talent shortage in the battery industry today. So as a nonprofit, we're thinking a lot about how can we bridge that gap. The third pillar is democratizing access, and this is both access to information as well as access to networking opportunities. So like I've mentioned, everything we do is open access. We host more than 50 Volta-branded events every year. And I believe, I think that's still true today, that all of these events are open access to anybody that's interested in joining us. And then hopefully a lot of your audience are familiar with the battery report that we publish every year. So that is, so that report obviously is an open access report as well. So the last pillar is advocacy. This is both on the culture side as well as on the policy side. So like I mentioned, as we grow as an industry, there is a tremendous opportunity for us to influence the culture that we have, both in terms of inclusivity as well as collaboration, and then of course on the policy advocacy side, a lot of our the success of the ecosystem is going to be a function of the policies that influence us. So as a trade association, we're also thinking a lot about how can we help policymakers make decisions that make sense for the battery industry.
And before we get on to the future, just one final question over the past 5 years. Is there anything that you would have done differently along the way?
Part of my identity as an entrepreneur, I think every week, if there was a time machine to go back to the beginning of the week, I would have done something differently. So I think there's a continuous sense of personal growth on that front. I think most of the learning are trivial in the sense that it's not that it's not an existential kind of lessons that I've learned in the last 5 years for Volta. Something that I would have done differently, actually quite a few things. I'm really proud of the people that we're able to recruit on our staff. Wouldn't change anything there. Earlier, I mentioned one of the challenges is not being at the right scale for the problems that we're trying to tackle. And so I think if I was to go back 5 years, I would have thought more about maybe along the lines of fundraising. You know, how can we communicate more effectively with organizations and with institutions that have aligned missions with us, and be able to sort of build partnerships earlier on. Today we have very strong partnerships with organizations like Stanford and national labs and so on. But I think I would have started those conversations much earlier so that we can scale faster. I think that's one of the things that I would have done differently.
Very interesting. As you said, I'm sure if you had our time again, we'd have done things very differently. But you have to, I guess, appreciate things on the journey and learn from them and apply those to the future. Which brings me to my next question. I'm sure you have many future plans for the foundations, but for the foundation. But which plans are you most excited about?
Obviously, there are always big plans that we're working on for the future. I think two main directions that I'm excited about to share with you today. The first one is along the direction of community building. So I think we're mostly known for our very popular virtual events in the US and Europe and so on. One of the things that we're starting to do more in the next year is in-person events. So a couple months back, we hosted our very first in-person conference, the Women in Batteries Conference at Stanford. And we had such great response to that event that I think in the future, we'll start to think more about organizing events in person. So there'll be more to come about that, and hopefully that will catalyze more relationship building and community building that are important for our individual and company members. The other direction that I'm really excited about is along the lines of providing an effective platform for coordination and collaboration across the industry. So we're starting to launch different platforms for leaders in the industry to come together to have dialogue and to coordinate. And so there'll be more to come about that. Certainly, we take it seriously, kind of our role in the industry of providing that platform for leaders to come together as well. So we'll be working on that.
To touch on a couple of things you've said before, I didn't actually mention the battery report. Everyone I speak to loves the report and values it greatly. They take a lot from it, and I know how much work goes into preparing that each year. With the in-person event, which of course Nika led with Women in Batteries, it was amazing to see the appetite for that in-person event and the kind of movement that she's created in the space. So yeah, such amazing things that have happened that wasn't there before, creating a safe space for people and enriching their professional journey, which obviously feeds into their personal journey as well. So I'm amazing, excited for the future. We talked about a community a lot, so let's ask you some questions from the community, a new section for the podcast. So some quick fire questions. You're a very popular person in the space, so I got quite a lot of questions. So for time, I've just narrowed it down to 4. The first one, what's your biggest concern about the future of the battery ecosystem?
Wow, that's a great question. There are actually quite a few concerns, I would say, off the top of my head. Since this is a short format, let me just narrow them down a little bit. So I'm trained as a scientist, and one thing that I know that I've learned in kind of my scientific career is that the things that go wrong tends to be the things that you're not paying attention to. So obviously, there's a lot of conversation around technology, about industrialization, about policy. I think those are all important potential areas for roadblocks. But I think kind of everybody's thinking about that quite a bit. One thing that's unique that I feel like we maybe should have more conversations around is the way that us as an industry communicate with the general public. I feel like, and just maybe personally as a sort of personal story, every time I travel, and if I'm speaking to the person next to me on an airplane, for example, I tell them, hey, I work in the battery industry. And almost immediately I probably more than 90% of the time, I'd be bombarded with information that's not quite true, kind of beliefs, that the general public has about our technology and about our impact on the society. So I think probably one area for more thought would be the way that we communicate our technology with the public and having a more thoughtful approach to educating the public about the benefits of our technology.
That's interesting. I think as well with press that happens around battery fires and battery safety, I think it's very important that the image we portray in the market and across the world is a positive one, because there is so much positive. So I think that's a really good point. I wasn't expecting that answer. That's a really, really interesting answer. Moving to the second question. Many business communities fail. Why do you think Volta has succeeded?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I'm taking it as most startup companies fail, and why is it that Volta has been able to get to the point that we are today? I think a couple of reasons. You can never discount luck. I think in the last 5 years, certainly the battery industry has gone through this transformational growth. So I think we're very lucky to be in the right moment in history. I think we're also very lucky in that the functions that we fulfill for the battery ecosystem, community building, providing a platform for coordination, providing reliable, thoughtful, expert kind of information about the battery industry. I think these, the need for these functions will always be there, and I think we are very lucky to be an organization that's very good at fulfilling those needs. Yeah.
Next question, a very easy one. We're seeing a rise in communities across many industries now. What are the benefits for people joining communities?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think maybe the silver lining for COVID is that it created this wider acceptance of people being able to participate in communities remotely. And to me, I think that's a really important change in the way that our society functions. It used to be that if you want to participate in something, you must be in the right place and know the right people. And one interesting transformation for our society is that because we have these modern technology, modern platforms like podcasts, like Zoom meetings and so on, that we're kind of overcoming those barriers now in geography and background, in access to networks. So I think that's a really, really positive change that we're seeing just as a civilization at large. For the battery industry, it's especially important because the way that we operate needs to be very interdisciplinary. It's not just we make a battery in a vacuum. There are technologists, industrialists, policymakers, stakeholders in finance, and so on in academia that need to come together. And so I think having these really inclusive communities is not just nice to have, but actually necessary to catalyze the advancements that our ecosystem needs. So that's great. But to answer your question more directly, why should people join the communities? Because it's a very effective and efficient way to advance in your career, to learn more things and meet more people. And I think every time anybody comes to a Volta Foundation event, hopefully they can feel that we create these events for the battery professionals, by the battery professionals. And so we have lots of networking opportunities, even Zoom and online events. And then, of course, as the webinars go, lots of opportunities to learn new information and assimilate knowledge. Yeah, so I think those are all positive things. And because we're open access, you don't need to know anybody special to come and join us. And so we're very inclusive. And we always make sure to welcome the new people.
In short, there's too many reasons that we can discuss through today as to why you should join a community, especially in kind of quick fire format. So thank you for that. Yeah, and one final question from the community. Again, a very easy one for you. What makes a great community leader?
Oh, wow.
And try not to describe your own personality, of course.
Be a good-looking person. No, I'm just kidding. It's actually not an easy question to answer. I think there are two parts to it. One part is leadership. I think people think a lot about that, right? Just the sense of understanding incentives, understanding human beings, being thoughtful and finding alignment so that there's there's good match of kind of the what people need and what they get out of their experiences in interacting with your organization and with yourself. So that's good leadership, just being thoughtful about how you're helping other people. The other part of this question is about community, and that's actually the harder part. I think when people think about a leader, most of the time it's in the capitalistic, leader of a company, and so I think incentives, alignment, that all makes sense. Community is a little bit different. The way that Volta works, for example, the battery report's a perfect example. Battery report is today by far the most read report covering the battery industry, about 100,000 downloads every year. Many, if not most people in the battery industry are aware of this resource. And it's unique in that it's 300 pages of in-depth content that's just open access. You don't have to pay for it. We just put it on our website and you can go and download it. And why I say community is a tricky thing is because we're able to create a battery report. The way that we do it is not by, having like an in-house team of consultants that, kind of work throughout the year to build it. The way that we write the battery report is every year in Q4, we gather a giant team of volunteers who are experts in the battery industry, and they each contribute, 1, 2, 3 slides in their domain of expertise for this really valuable resource. So where community comes in is that the ecosystem needs an open access resource like this. Resources like this exist. Like if you have tens of thousands of dollars, you can hire a consultant. They'll write something like this for you. But the people who need this resource sometimes don't have that kind of budget. So that's where communities come in, is being able to communicate to the people who are working on resources like these to say, look, the ecosystem needs this. You have the expertise to contribute to this resource, and then being able to build the infrastructure, the processes, and the sort of institutional structures to kind of enable. Last year, for example, about 120 experts from about 100 different institutions come together to write the battery report. So just being able to communicate the vision and being able to create the infrastructure and the organization to allow that to happen. That's what community means to me, is bringing people together to make a difference together. I think that's tricky. Yeah, I'm still learning how to do it well every day.
Amazing. That's also super fascinating, the way in which the battery report is put together. I didn't know that, and that's fascinating. So I guess you have to have good organization skills to be a good community leader, because that's a big report and many contributors. So the battery show is coming up very soon. This episode is going to be released mid-September. So I guess kind of three or so weeks until the battery show in Detroit starts. We are obviously going to be there as well, partnering with you in your booth, suite, Volta Foundation room. So kind of talk us through that a bit more, your lounge at the show.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the battery show in just a few weeks. I think many of your audience know that the battery show is much larger at a new venue this year. And that's a tremendous sign of just the growth of the battery industry. I think in the last couple of years, for folks that kind of, every year make the journey to Detroit to attend the battery show, knows the last few years, the show is just fully at capacity. And so it's great to see that there's a new venue for the battery show. And I personally have been going to the battery show for as long as I can remember, in different capacities, certainly now as a kind of leader for Volta Foundation, but previously, representing different companies and so on. So really excited for the growth of the event. This year especially, Volta Foundation has a special partnership with the battery show, in that we have our own space called the Volta Lounge. It's on the same floor as the show, and what we're trying to create is a space for our member companies and individual members to come together to network and to learn from one another. And so there are lots of different events and activities that we're planning within the space, and hopefully it will feel like a very personal kind of oasis of personal connection in this space. So really looking forward to it. And if you're attending the battery show in a couple of weeks, definitely come check out the Volta Lounge.
And I always look forward to the Volta happy hours. So when is that this year?
Yeah, thank you, Jamie, for the kind words about the Volta Foundation happy hour. We've been hosting this for the last 2 years. We're really looking forward to that. This year it will be on Wednesday night of the show.
And thank you again for allowing us to have a section of the lounge. We're going to be conducting some kind of short form conversation and interviews with Volta members. So kind of a take charge mini edition where people can kind of talk through issues. So really excited for that kind of new format and new venue. It's grown so much over the years. Last year in Novi, it was maybe not quite suitable. This year is should be really exciting. So looking forward to that. And really appreciate you coming onto the show today. I've been looking forward to this episode for a while. Looking forward to powering more episodes in partnership with the Volta Foundation, and excited for the next 5 years ahead for you guys.
Yeah, likewise. It's always a treat to speak with you, Jamie, and I'm so impressed with what you've done with your company and with the podcast. So excited that we can be partners in this journey.
Thank you so much. Look forward to meeting you in Detroit over a cappuccino in the lounge. And I'll see you in Detroit.
All right, see you soon.